Because I'd already done the erasing myself. The knock came just after 9:45 p.m., soft, but persistent, echoing in a house that had finally found its quiet. I paused, tea mug in hand, and glanced at the door like it had spoken. No one came to visit. Me unannounced, certainly not at this hour. My porch light flicked on automatically, and through the frosted glass I saw two familiar silhouettes. One tall and hunched, the other shorter, arms wrapped around herself like a child. Sent to apologize. I opened the door just enough to lean against the frame. My parents stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. Mom's cardigan sagged around her shoulders. Dad's posture had caved in on itself. Their eyes were red, not from tears, but from the kind of exhaustion that clings to guilt. We didn't know where else to go, Mom said, voice barely above a whisper. You could have called, I replied evenly. We thought you wouldn't answer. You were right, she gave a tight, nervous laugh. The kind she used to soften the blow of harsh truths. Can we come in? Dad asked, voice raspier than I remembered. No, I said, but we can talk here. They hesitated. The cold breeze crept between us. Mom glanced at the empty street behind them, then back at me. We wanted to clear the air, she began. I'm sure, I said. What happened? At the party? She continued. It was a moment. Claire gave us that photo and everyone was watching. And you said, I've never been there for the family. Mom flinched. It wasn't meant how it sounded. It sounded pretty clear, I replied. Dad stepped forward. Your mother got carried away. You know how she gets when she's emotional. I tilted my head. You mean when she's telling the truth? Silence. They shifted, unsure of how to proceed now that the script had been torn. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom offered. Quieter now. You've always been so reliable. We just assumed that I'd keep paying, keep smiling, keep being invisible. She didn't argue. I'm not here for apologies, I said, folding my arms. I just want to know something. Do you even know how much I've given? Dad opened his mouth, closed it. Mom shook her head, slightly uncertain. $147,000, I said. That's the total over 11 years. Mortgage payments, utility bills, groceries, car repairs, surprise medical expenses, CLA's tuition, your emergencies, all of it. Their faces went pale. You're exaggerating, Mom said reflexively, but it came out weak. I'm not. I ran the numbers last night. Every wire transfer, every auto payment, every. Just this once that turned into habit. Dad looked down at the porch steps, suddenly very interested in the crack in the cement. You never asked for any of it, I continued. That's true, but you never told me to stop either. We didn't know, Dad said softly. No, I corrected. You didn't want to know, Mom's voice trembled. So what? You're just going to abandon us? I'm stepping back, I said. You can call Claire. She's the one who's always been there, remember? She opened her mouth, maybe to object, maybe to defend, but nothing came out. For a moment, all I heard was the wind rustling through the hedges and the hum of the neighbor's porch light. You stood in a room full of people and erased me, I said, my voice flat. Now you're here asking me to pretend that didn't happen. That's not fair, Mom whispered. No, I said, it's accurate. They looked at me, not like a daughter, not even like a stranger, more like someone they used to know and now barely recognized. I waited for a plea, for something resembling regret, but all I got was silence. I think we're done here, I said, and gently closed the door. I didn't move right away after shutting the door. I just stood behind it, hand still on the knob, heart not racing, just quiet. A strange kind of stillness had settled into my bones, the kind that didn't come from peace, but from depletion. Then, through the wood, I heard her voice again, muffled, tight. So that's it? You're cutting us off over money. I opened the door just enough to lean out again. No, I said calmly. Not because of money. Because I'm not your daughter anymore. Not in the way that counts. Mom blinked, stunned. Her lips parted. Like she was going to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Dad stood frozen beside her, eyes hollow. You made that choice, I added. Not with your finances, with your toast. That's not fair, she said again. But it sounded more automatic than sincere. I didn't reply. I wasn't there to debate fairness. I was there to hold the line. Then something shifted in Dad. He hadn't spoken much since they arrived. But now he looked up at me with a kind of pain I hadn't seen since Grandpa's funeral. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. She used your name, he said softly. I frowned. What? Claire. Last year when she needed a small loan for her studio. Said you were co-signing. Said she had your permission. The world didn't spin. My knees didn't give. There was no dramatic soundtrack or cinematic gasp. Just silence and the sound of something else inside me giving way. You signed for Claire? I asked him. She had the paperwork, he said. Said you were at work and asked her to bring it. I closed my eyes for a beat, then opened them again. She forged my signature, I said. Dad nodded slowly. Eyes glassy. And you didn't check with me. We trusted her, he said. Of course they did. Do you still have the documents? I asked. I think so. I'll have a lawyer contact you this week. That made Mom step forward, panic rising in her voice. Rachel, come on. It's Claire. She was trying to save her business. She stole my identity, I said. You know what that's called. It's not like she took thousands. She took trust. I snapped. And you let her. Dad wiped at his eyes. The man who once taught me how to ride a bike now looked like he couldn't find solid ground. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't want to know, I said again. The wind had picked up. Mom hugged her cardigan tighter, suddenly looking older than her 67 years. We raised you better than this, she said bitterly. No, I replied. You raised Claire better. You raised me to fix things. And then I shut the door. This time I didn't linger. I walked away from it like it was just any door in any house, in any neighborhood. Because in that moment, that's all it was. Not a boundary, not a symbol, just wood. Back in the kitchen. I poured my cold tea down the drain and rinsed the mug. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to. There was no fury burning in my chest. No tears clinging to the edge of my lashes. Just emptiness. The kind that no apology could fill. The kind that didn't ache anymore. It just existed. I sat on the couch and let the quiet blanket me. Not as a punishment, not as a sulk, but as the natural sound of a space no longer obligated to hold anyone else's weight. The knock this time was louder, sharper, angry. It didn't come with guilt or hesitation. It came with entitlement. I opened the door slowly, already knowing who it would be. Claire stood on my porch, arms crossed, jaw tight. She wasn't trying to look composed. Her hair was frizzed from rushing. Makeup smudged beneath her eyes. If I didn't know better, I'd almost say she'd been crying. You're killing them, she snapped. No greeting. No preamble. Do you even care? I leaned on the door frame unbothered. Nice to see you too. I'm serious, she said, stepping closer. They're drowning, Rachel. The mortgage, the bills, Mom's prescriptions. They don't have anything saved. You knew that. I did, I said calmly. Then why? She demanded, eyes wild. Why pull the rug out from under them now? You're punishing them for a comment. I raised an eyebrow. A comment? She faltered, but didn't retreat. Okay, a cruel comment, but still. You don't ruin an entire family over a mistake. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I just stopped propping it up. You're being petty. No, I said, I'm being literal. I spent over a decade helping them survive. The moment I stepped back, everything collapsed. That should tell you something. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes searched mine like she was trying to find a crack, a soft spot, but I was all surface now, smooth, sealed. They're not built to handle this kind of pressure, she said quietly. And I was, she didn't answer. You keep saying I'm killing them, I continued. But what I'm doing is living according to the story they told. The one where I Never really helped, never really cared. I'm just aligning my actions with their version of events. That's not fair. I tilted my head. Isn't it? Claire looked down at the porch boards, then back up. Her voice cracked slightly. I can't do it, Rachel. Something in her tone shifted. Less anger, more fear. I've been trying, she said. They gave me the account login, the bills. I set up autopay with my own card. I tried to schedule the appointments. I made grocery lists, tracked spending, even went through Mom's insurance documents. And I'm terrible at it, she admitted, shoulders sinking. I missed 2 due dates already. I forgot to refill Dad's heart meds. I didn't know their property taxes were that high. There's a late fee now. For a moment, I saw the girl she used to be. The one who made chore wheels with glitter markers and then forgot to feed the cat for 3 days. I thought you'd done it all. Effortlessly, she continued, voice low. But it's like it never ends. Some things always breaking. Some things always do. It never ends. I agreed. But I never said it was easy. I thought they were exaggerating when they said you were the reason the house was still standing. I didn't respond. Claire took a breath. They weren't. And there it was. A truth. Small but intact. I can't fix this, she whispered. I thought I could, that I'd finally step up and they'd see I was more than just the favorite, but I don't know what I'm doing. So, you want me to come back? I said, not asking. She didn't nod, didn't speak, just stared, pleading. I waited a long moment, then said no. Her lips parted like she was going to argue, but nothing came out. You don't get to insult someone's labor for years, then beg for their help when you realize it mattered. I was jealous, she said suddenly, and the confession hung there like fog. Not because of the money, but because they talked about you like you were the backbone and I was the decoration. I thought if I gave them something emotional, pictures, words, memories, they'd love me more. They already did, I said. I didn't know how to be useful. She admitted. And now you do. She looked away. No, but I know I can't handle what you did. I studied her for a moment. Claire, the golden child, the one who never paid rent, who got praised for showing up late but laughing loudly, now breaking. Maybe, I said softly. It's time you learn. She looked back at me, eyes rimmed red. But this time she didn't argue. I stepped back just far enough to begin closing the door. Good luck, Claire, I said. Then I shut it. 3 days later, Claire returned. She didn't knock this time. She rang the doorbell twice in quick succession. Errant, like someone trying to outrun a consequence. When I opened the door, she stood there with a duffel bag at her feet and dark circles under her eyes. I need a place to stay, she said flatly. I didn't move. Just for a little while, she added quickly. A few nights, maybe a week. I looked at her, really looked. The smeared mascara, the frigged ponytail, the chipped nail polish. She wasn't falling apart with flair. She was unraveling quietly, the way people do when they've been pretending too long. No, I said. Claire blinked. What? You can't stay here. Her mouth opened slightly like she couldn't quite believe I'd said it out loud. I don't have anywhere else, she said. You have them. I replied. They're the reason I need to leave, she snapped. They're suffocating me. I didn't answer, just crossed my arms and waited. Claire stepped forward, her voice tighter now. You don't get it, Rachel. Ever since you cut them off, everything shifted. They fight all the time. Mom keeps asking me where the money went, why I didn't step in. Dad barely talks. I'm the one they're blaming now. My chest didn't tighten. My breath didn't hitch. I just nodded once. They say I ruined everything, she continued. That I was supposed to handle it. That I let them down. That I embarrassed them at the party by dragging you out of their lives. Did you? I asked. Her eyes widened. What? No, I didn't say anything. No, I said. You just didn't stop her. She fell silent. I stepped out onto the porch, letting the door close gently behind me. We stood there side by side, Two daughters in the aftermath of a family portrait no longer hanging straight. They say things like, "You should have been more like Rachel," Claire whispered. It's like whiplash. One day I'm there. Pride, now I'm there regret. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindicated, but I did feel honest. Now, I said quietly, what it feels like to be the fallback, the utility, the problem solver who still somehow gets blamed when things go wrong. Claire looked down. Welcome to my last 11 years, I added. She swallowed hard, then looked up at me. So, this is revenge. No, I said, this is balance. Please, she said, I can't stay there. I can't keep pretending like I know what I'm doing. Then stop pretending, I said. And do what? Figure it out. She scoffed. That's easy for you to say. You're always the strong one. I shook my head. No, I was just the quiet one. No one noticed when I bled. Claire looked like she wanted to cry, but nothing came out. At my father's 70th birthday party, while a string quartet played Vivaldi and glasses clinked in celebration, my mother raised her champagne and smiled. To Claire, the daughter who's always been our anchor, she beamed. Then, she turned to me and with a chuckle that cut deeper than any silence, added, and to Rachel, who's always been elsewhere. I had paid their mortgage for 11 years, covered CLA's student loans, sent groceries every month. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just smiled, walked out the door, and started canceling everything. If I was invisible, I might as well disappear properly. The room was glowing. String lights draped from the rafters like golden vines, casting a warm haze over the grand dining hall. A jazz trio played in the corner, blending smooth melodies into the soft hum of conversation and clinking glassware. It was the kind of night that people planned for months, curated down to the last folded napkin. And it was my idea. My father's 70th birthday was supposed to be more than just a party. It was meant to be a moment of reconnection. After years of distanced calls, short visits, and stilted conversations, I thought maybe a gesture this grand might melt the frost. I'd booked the private lodge, coordinated the catering, even paid extra for those little chocolate cigars my dad used to love. I wanted him to feel seen. I wanted all of us to remember how to love out loud. And I'd brought a gift. Not something flashy, just something thoughtful. A 3-day getaway to a coastal spa resort for my parents. All expenses paid, including the upgraded suite with the ocean view they always talked about but never booked. I had the envelope tucked discreetly under their place setting, waiting for the right time to surprise them. Then Claire arrived. She walked in, wearing a silk green dress that shimmered like envy under the chandeliers. All smiles and air kisses, her perfume trailing behind her like a declaration. People flocked to her though. Always kind of closed off, wasn't she? Never really part of things. That was the trigger, not the post, not the pictures, the like. That single act, so effortless, so casual, was her way of nodding, confirming, affirming that yes. I had always been the outlier, the cold one, the stranger who wandered in and never stayed long enough to warm the room. I opened my laptop. No rage, no dramatic music in the background, just a methodical click-through of old files, folders labeled by year, subfolders by purpose, mortgage, utilities, tuition, emergencies. I took screenshots, dozens of them, wire transfers with timestamps, copies of bills with my name and their address, the exact amount I paid towards CLA's tuition loan, the dental co-I covered last year, grocery delivery receipts. Screenshots of text threads confirming they'd received each one. Then I wrote the post. I didn't mention names. I didn't at anyone, just a caption. They said I never showed up. Just wanted to share what showing up looked like for the past 11 years. Underneath, photo after photo, statement after statement, dollar signs lining the scroll like bruises turned inside out. At the bottom, I typed total $147, $32.19. No fanfare, no applause, just receipts. I hit post and shut the laptop. I didn't check my phone that night. I didn't refresh the page. I didn't read the comments. But by morning, it had reached its own momentum. A friend sent me a screenshot, a message. "Girl, it's blowing up. Thought you should know." I opened the app. Thousands of likes, hundreds of shares, dozens of comments from strangers and friends alike. Some shocked, some furious, many apologetic. But one stood out. From Linda, my mother's best friend of 25 years. She'd been in our lives since before Claire was born. She'd braided my hair once for a wedding. Taught me how to bake shortbread cookies when I was 9. Her comment was simple. "I didn't know. I truly didn't know, and I'm so sorry." That was the twist. Not that strangers cared, but that someone from her world saw the truth and couldn't look away. Within hours, Mom's original post vanished. CLA's too. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. A collapse in progress. Quiet and crushing. And still, I didn't respond because I already had. The silence arrived not like a sudden hush, but like fog, slow, creeping, unmistakable. No more family posts. No more veiled captions or passive-aggressive photos. The likes slowed. The comments dried up. Even the ones who had been most vocal, Uncle Derek, Cousin Marianne, Aunt Liz, vanished from my notifications. I scrolled through my feed the next day. Out of curiosity. Nothing. It was as if they'd all collectively agreed to go dark. No one defended my parents anymore. No one called for me to be the bigger person. The thread had ended, not with resolution, but with reality. Exposed, and no one quite knowing what to say next. It didn't feel triumphant. Just quiet until the message came. It was from Lily, my younger cousin. She was 22 now, still in college last I heard. We'd never been particularly close. I sent her a few graduation gifts over the years, a couple of holiday cards. She always seemed sweet, thoughtful, a little lost in the shadow of the older, louder cousins. Her message was short. "Hey, I don't know if this is okay to send, but I saw your post and I just wanted to say thank you. I always knew something was off. You were the only one who ever asked about my art, the only one who remembered my birthday on time. When I was 12, I told my mom I wanted to grow up and be like you, not Claire. You were the kind of woman I wished was my mom." I read it twice, then a third time, and that more than the viral reactions. More than the apologies or deleted posts. That message broke something open. Because while I'd spent the better part of my adult life trying to be seen by two specific people, I never stopped to wonder who had been watching, who noticed when I remembered the small things, who saw me show up in the margins even when I wasn't in the frame. I stared at Lily's message for a long time, blinking slowly like the screen might blur into something else. But it didn't. It stayed steady, clear. I wrote back, "Thank you, Lily. I don't think you know how much this means to me. I always saw you too." She replied instantly, "I hope someday your parents realize what they lost. But even if they don't, you deserved better. And now you have better." And maybe that was the moment, the shift, the release. Because for the first time in years, I felt something loosen inside me. Not a collapse, not a shattering, but a kind of gentle exhale, a letting go. I set my phone down and looked around my living room. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The same couch, the same bookshelf, the same faint ticking of the wall clock, but the air felt different. Lighter. I hadn't wanted revenge. I hadn't wanted a parade or a crowd of sympathizers. I just wanted someone, anyone, to say, "I saw you." And now someone had. Not because I screamed the loudest, but because the truth, when laid bare, has a way of shining on its own. I made a cup of tea and curled into the corner of my couch. Outside, the wind shifted through the trees, rustling the leaves like soft applause. No more performance, no more pretending, just breath, just space, just peace. They didn't knock this time. They just stood there, 3 of them, at the bottom of my porch steps, like school children waiting outside the principal's office. My mother in another too-thin cardigan, arms crossed over her chest. My father slightly behind her, hands in pockets, eyes fixed on the ground. Claire was off to the side, arms hanging awkwardly like she didn't know what to do with them anymore. I noticed them through the window as I was putting on the kettle. I didn't rush, just stood still for a moment, watching them, wondering how long they'd been standing there in the late afternoon sun. Eventually, I opened the door. No words, just a raised eyebrow and a body that didn't move from the threshold. "Can we talk?" my mother asked, voice strained. "We're already talking," I replied. She glanced at the porch like it might bite her. "May we come in?" "No," I said. Say what you need to say." Claire looked up at that, surprised but not offended. She was pale, eyes ringing with fatigue. Her defiance had been stripped away, replaced by something raw. Exhaustion maybe, or honesty. My father cleared his throat. "We wanted to say we're sorry." I didn't reply. My mother continued, "We shouldn't have said what we said. It was stupid, thoughtless. You didn't just say it." I said, "You performed it in front of everyone." She nodded slowly. "I know. We didn't think." "No," I cut in. "You did think. You just didn't think it would cost you anything." That made her flinch. Claire shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "It was the moment," Mom said. "Claire had just given us that photo. Everyone was watching. I loved the attention I offered." Claire stepped forward. "She didn't mean it like that." "She said what she meant," I said. "And you didn't correct her." "I was caught off guard," she said. "No," I said again. "You liked it. You liked being the golden child. You liked the room thinking you were the one holding the family together." Claire's mouth opened, then closed again. Then she said quietly, "I didn't hate you, Rachel." "Thanks," I said dryly. "I mean it," she said. "I didn't hate you. I was scared of you." I blinked. Scared. "You were always the one who did things right, who got things done, who kept receipts and paid bills and remembered birthdays without needing a reminder. I couldn't compete with that. So, I made everything about feelings because that was the only thing I thought I could win at." I didn't respond. Claire continued. "I didn't know how to be useful, so I leaned into being loved. I gave them moments. You gave them stability. And they chose moments. And you let them," I said. "You let them think I was cold, distant, uncaring. I didn't know what else to do. You could have spoken up." She looked down. "You chose silence," I said. "And you enjoyed the rewards." Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. "I was afraid you were always right. That stopped me for a beat. Because I knew it was true. And now I asked, now I know you were." I nodded. Slowly. "And you still let them believe I was the problem." "I didn't have the courage," she admitted. "And now that they're turning on you, suddenly you found it." Claire looked away. My mother dabbed at her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. My father stared at a spot on the porch floor like it held all the answers. I waited, calm, still, not angry, not bitter, just done. My mother stepped forward. "We want to make it right." "You can't," I said. "Well, try," she offered. "No," I replied. "You'll hope." "I forget." A pause. "I'm not angry anymore," I added. "I'm just finished." Claire looked up again, her face, once so polished and expressive, now slack with defeat. "We miss you," she said. "You miss what I gave," I replied. "You don't know me well enough to miss me." That landed. Nobody argued. After a long silence, I said quietly, "You came here hoping for restoration. But you don't get to undo years with a porch apology." Mom opened her mouth, but I raised a hand to stop her. "This isn't about forgiveness," I said. "It's about boundaries." No one moved. No one spoke. "I hope you find peace," I said, "but not at my expense anymore." Then I stepped back and closed the door. The seasons turned quietly after that. Leaves yellowed, then browned. The air sharpened at the edges. Halloween decorations appeared in neighborhood yards. Skeletons grinning from porches. Pumpkins softening under early frost. I didn't speak to my parents. I didn't check in with Claire. I let the calendar roll forward like a train I no longer needed to board. Then one Sunday morning in late November, I got a message from a former neighbor. Saw the moving truck outside your parents' place. Looks like they sold it. I didn't reply. A few hours later, another message came from someone else in town. This one included a photo. The front lawn bare, the familiar flower boxes removed, windows dark. A sold sign angled awkwardly on the dead grass. Claire had moved out a few weeks before, apparently found a small apartment 2 towns over. No forwarding address, but her new Instagram bio. Simply read, trying again. My parents had taken what they could and downsized to a rental. Nothing special. 2 bedrooms, low ceilings, linoleum floors. The kind of place you find when you're scrambling, not settling. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to, not because it stirred guilt, but because of how empty it looked. Not just the porch or the windows, but the whole structure. Hollowed out. The house I helped them keep afloat for almost a decade was now someone else's problem. And somehow that felt right. I didn't visit. I didn't drive by to see it one last time. Because closure doesn't live in places. It lives in choice, and I had already made mine. In December, I decorated my own home for the first time in years. Not for guests. Not for obligation, just for me. A small tree in the corner of the living room, white lights strung carefully across the window, a candle that smelled like pine and cinnamon, no gifts under the tree, no cards from family, just space, quiet. My own breath moving freely through a room that finally belonged only to me. I didn't miss them. That was the strangest part. I missed the version of them I used to imagine. The ones I thought would see me someday. Recognize the invisible work. Reach back. But the real people, the ones who stood on my porch. Asking for a redo, not with regret, but with hope I'd forget. No, I didn't miss them. And yet, I forgave them. Not with an announcement, not with a call, but with the simple act of letting go. Forgiveness, I'd come to learn, isn't about reopening the door. It's about recognizing that the door needed to close for a reason and choosing not to stand at it forever, waiting for someone to knock again. I forgave them the moment I stopped hoping they'd change. Because hope had kept me chained. Forgiveness set me free. I used to think my role was to hold everyone together. The fixer, the silent hero, the dependable daughter in the background of every family photo. But the truth was, I was never in those photos. And now I didn't need to be. I didn't need the spotlight. I didn't need applause. I just needed room to breathe. And that room, quiet, whole, and entirely mine, was finally here. On New Year's Eve, I stood alone on my balcony, wrapped in a thick sweater, sipping tea. Fireworks bloomed faintly in the distance. Distant echoes of celebration I didn't have to attend. I closed my eyes and made no resolutions. Just a promise to stop disappearing. To stop apologizing for not being what others needed, especially when they never asked what I needed in return. To exist for myself fully. Fiercely. Finally. When I stepped back inside, the warmth wrapped around me. Like welcome. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was returning to a place I rented emotionally. Way they always did. She moved like she belonged in the spotlight. And maybe she did. She carried a large tissue-wrapped frame. And I didn't think much of it. Claire always brought something sentimental, scrapbooks, vision boards, paintings from a friend of a friend. I figured it was another well-intentioned art piece. She placed it on the gift table without fanfare and floated off to mingle. Dinner was delicious. Speeches were made. Laughter bounced off the wooden beams. And for a while I let myself hope. My father looked genuinely happy, sipping his wine, cheeks flushed. My mother's eyes sparkled, and not just from the champagne. And then, just before dessert, someone called for one more toast. Claire stood up. She gave a bashful smile like she hadn't rehearsed every word. I wasn't planning on saying anything, she started, but I just wanted to thank Mom and Dad for everything. And I brought a little something to show my appreciation. She gestured to the frame. A cousin helped her carry it to the center. It was a photo collage, a mosaic of family memories, vacations, Christmas mornings, barbecues on the lake. Not a single photo of me. My breath caught in my throat. I scanned the collage again, certain I'd missed something. Maybe there was a group shot where I was in the background. Maybe a childhood snap tucked into a corner. Nothing. Just them, Mom, Dad, and Claire smiling through time like a perfectly cropped fairy tale. The room hushed as my mother stood, glass in hand. To Claire, she said, voice rich with emotion. The daughter who's always been with us through thick and thin. She raised her glass. People clapped. Then she added louder this time, glancing briefly in my direction. And to Rachel, who's always been a little distant, but we love her anyway. A few polite chuckles. Someone dropped a fork. The jazz trio played on, oblivious. I sat there still. The smile on my face didn't move. My spine straightened, hands folded neatly in my lap, like I was posing for a portrait I didn't want to be in. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out or shatter a wine glass for drama. I just stood, picked up my coat, and walked out into the night. The gravel crunched beneath my heels as I walked to the car, the night air crisp with mountain cold. I didn't slam the door. I didn't peel away with tires screeching. I just sat. For a minute, hands resting on the wheel, watching my breath fog up the windshield. The warmth from inside the lodge still clung to me like a memory, like something I'd just lost, but hadn't fully realized. Then I started the engine, turned off the music, and let silence be my only companion. 2 hours of highway stretched ahead. 2 hours to unspool the knots in my chest, to breathe through the sting that wouldn't quite fade. My mind wandered, uninvited, unwelcome, to all the moments I thought would mean something. The late nights balancing spreadsheets for work, then wiring money to cover CLA's final semester when she dropped her part-time job. The time I dipped into my savings to pay for Mom's dental surgery because Dad said insurance wouldn't cover it. I'd never asked for anything in return. Not even gratitude, just space. A seat at the table, a name in the collage, but there was none of that, not even a picture on the corner. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as a bitter thought slipped in. Maybe they really did forget. Or maybe Claire made sure they did. The memory hit sharp. 3 years ago. A frantic call from Claire. "Alright, it's bad. I'm overdrawn, and if I miss this payment, they'll default me." I sent the money within the hour. $3,800. No questions, no hesitation. Weeks later, at a family brunch, I overheard Mom praising Claire for being so responsible lately. Claire just smiled and said, "I'm trying. You know, finally got myself out of that debt hole." She never mentioned me. Not once. Just wore the credit like a crown. I hadn't thought much of it then. Or maybe I had. And shoved it down the way you do with family. You excuse the little betrayals. Because the bigger picture, the illusion of love, is worth preserving. But that night, alone on a dark stretch of I-90, the illusion cracked. I thought about all the birthdays I'd missed. Because I picked up overtime. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. Because I wanted to send a nicer gift to make things easier for them. I remembered the canceled vacation I gave up because the furnace broke and they needed help again. I'd told myself love was sacrifice, that being the reliable one was enough, but reliable gets mistaken for absent. Steady gets mistaken for cold. And suddenly I saw myself not as the grown woman with a good job and a quiet apartment, but as the girl at 8 years old, sitting at the kitchen table drawing a card for Mother's Day while Claire was in the living room putting glitter on hers. Mom taped CLAs to the fridge. Mine ended up in the drawer. That drawer. That damn drawer that held every bland, practical thing I'd ever done. Receipts, tax returns, proof I was useful but never adored. Maybe I'd been chasing that fridge door my whole life, hoping one day something I did would be worthy of display. That they'd look at me not for what I provided, but for who I was. Not Rachel, the bank account, Rachel, the daughter. But that toast. Shattered the last sliver of hope. If I was always going to be the distant one, maybe I needed to live up to it properly. As I exited the highway and turned into my neighborhood, a thought whispered in the quiet. What if I stopped? What if I really stopped? No. More money. No more wiring in emergencies. No more waiting to be noticed. I could disappear from there. Narrative the way they'd already written me out. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. I pulled into my driveway, turned off the car, and sat there as the engine ticked into stillness. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning what to fix next. I was letting it all go. The morning light spilled across my kitchen counter, soft and golden, as if the world didn't remember what had happened the night before. I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the spoon clang against the sides of the mug, just to hear something that wasn't a voice. Because my phone had been vibrating nonstop since 6:17 a.m. 43 missed calls, 8 text messages, 1 voicemail that started with, "Rachel, please just call us back," and ended in static. I let it ring, let it buzz, let the red notification dots pile up like tiny digital screams. I wasn't ready to hear their version of the story yet, not ready to be guilt or gaslit or told it was just a joke and that I was too sensitive. CLA's name flashed across the screen again. I watched it blink, then disappear. A minute later, she tried FaceTime. I let that one go. 2. A text popped up almost immediately. "Where are you?" Then, another. "We're stuck." That one made me pause. I slid the phone toward me, unlocked it, and opened the latest message. Claire was at the marina. Apparently, the boat tour the family had planned for the morning, the one with the champagne brunch and historical guide, had been canceled. Not weather related. Payment declined, the message said. Another buzz. Claire again. Was your card on file? I didn't answer. I sipped my coffee and stared out the window as the neighborhood came to life. Joggers, dogs barking, sprinklers ticking across manicured lawns. It felt distant, like I was watching it through a pane of thick glass. Then the phone rang again. I answered, this time not because I felt forgiving, but because I wanted to hear how she'd spin it. "Oh my God, finally," Claire huffed. "We've been trying to reach you all morning. No one can get on the boat? They said the reservation was canceled." "I know," I said calmly. There was a pause. "Wait, what do you mean you know?" "I canceled it." Another pause. Longer. This time, I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. "You what? Why would you do that?" Everyone's freaking out. Mom's crying. Dad's trying to talk to the captain. This is a disaster. Because I said, last night. Mom stood up in front of 60 people and said, "I've never really been there for the family." So, I figured it was time to make that true. Silence. The kind that isn't empty, but full of confusion. Fury, disbelief. "You're joking," she said finally. "I'm not. You paid for the whole trip. Every reservation, every rental car, every activity, the dinner last night, too." "That's insane," she whispered. "No," I said. "What's insane is letting someone rewrite your place in the family while you're still footing the bill. You can't just pull out like this." I didn't pull out. I stepped back. "There's a difference. Rachel, come on. You guys always wanted me to be quiet and supportive. This is me doing that quietly from a distance. People traveled to be here. This is supposed to be a celebration." "It was," I said for Claire. She was breathing hard now. "You're being petty." "No," I said, "I'm being precise." I hung up before she could respond. Then I opened my laptop and began going down the list. Cancellation confirmations, refund requests, bank alerts, the kayaking trip, the bonfire Mores night, the group yoga session with the overpriced instructor. All gone one by one as if they'd never existed. Because as far as they were concerned, I never did. By noon, I'd canceled everything. The catering deposit for tonight's group dinner gone. The horseback riding excursion Claire had begged to include, but never offered to pay for, reversed. Even the custom cake with the sparkler candles was stopped in transit. I wasn't vindictive. I just believed in consistency. If I was never really there, then so be it. Let them plan the rest of the weekend without me. Let them pay for it too. The final email confirmation came through just as my phone buzzed again. Claire. I debated, ignoring it. But something told me she wasn't done, I answered. What the hell is wrong with you? She snapped, skipping any pretense of civility. Are you trying to ruin everything? I'm not ruining anything, I said evenly. Just removing myself from the equation. You're being cruel. Everyone's upset. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad's so embarrassed. Interesting, I said. Because last night, no one seemed upset when Mom rewrote our entire family history in one sentence. She scoffed. God, you're still hung up on that toast. You mean the part where she said, I've never really been there? Yeah, Claire, I'm a little hung up on that. She didn't mean it like that. She said it in front of 60 people. Claire went quiet. Then her voice softened, not out of guilt, but calculation. Look, I get it. You felt excluded, but that's no reason to sabotage everything. Claire, I said. No one even knew I was paying for the trip. I didn't need applause. I needed not to be erased. She sighed. You're always so transactional. You think because you pay for things that's love. No, I said I think because I paid for things. Wow, she muttered. You sound just like Mom. That stopped me. Excuse me. She always says that, Claire continued. The words. Spilling fast and unfiltered now. That you throw money at problems instead of feelings? That you're distant, cold. Like you work a lot, but you don't really connect. I said nothing. She doesn't mean it to be cruel, Claire added quickly. She just wishes you'd show up more emotionally, like be softer. The sting hit harder than expected, not because it was a surprise, but because it wasn't. This narrative, this version of me, had been simmering under the surface for years, efficient, reliable, emotionally barren. I laughed once. Sharp and humorless. You know what's funny, Claire? When the water heater broke, I was the one they called. When Dad needed help refinancing the mortgage, it was me. When you maxed out your credit card and called crying, who wired you the money? She didn't answer. And none of that counted because I didn't cry at brunch or write glittery birthday cards. You're twisting things, she said quietly. No, I'm finally seeing them clearly. And the weight in my chest didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt solid, final. I'm not angry, Claire, I said. I'm just done playing a role I was never meant to survive. She was silent. I hope the rest of the weekend goes well, I added. Really? But from now on, it won't be on my dime. Rachel, I ended the call. Then I opened my closet and pulled out the dusty box labeled family. Inside were holiday cards, photo prints, old birthday letters. I dropped it all into a trash bag. It wasn't dramatic. It was methodical. Old utility bills in my name, shredded. Receipts from Claire's tuition wire deleted. The spare key to my parents' house dropped in a drawer, never to be used again. I cleaned like someone scrubbing away mold. Thorough. Detached, freeing. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clean. I didn't plan to look at the past. I wasn't the sentimental type and, honestly, digging into old wounds. Usually just left bruises. But that morning, I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out the file folders, the ones labeled with years instead of emotions. 2011, 2012, 2013. That first year after college, I'd been so proud to land my job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I bought secondhand furniture, lived with 2 roommates, and learned how to stretch a paycheck until it squeaked. Then Dad got laid off. It was quiet at first. A few missed calls from Mom. A vague voicemail. Just some unexpected things came up. We're fine, but if you have a little extra this month, I wired my entire first paycheck. Not part of it. Not what I could spare, the whole thing. Rent be damned. I remember feeling useful, needed, like maybe this was how adult children showed up by making sure the lights stayed on. There was no thank No email, no card, not even a voicemail, just silence. And the next month, another ask, then another. Eventually, it became expected. I never brought it up. I didn't want to make it transactional. I thought love meant giving without keeping score. Apparently, I was the only one not keeping score. 2 years later, at a family barbecue, Uncle Matt asked how my parents made it through that rough patch. I was within earshot when Dad said, "CLA stepped up big time. She put her yoga business on hold to be there." Claire, who hadn't worked a consistent job in years. Claire, who lived rent-free in the guest room while I split cans of tuna to make rent. I remember freezing by the cooler, soda can in hand, as they nodded and clapped. "She's got such a good heart," someone said, "always there when it counts." I never corrected them. I just walked away and told myself it didn't matter. That truth has a way of surfacing that maybe my reward wasn't recognition, but peace of mind. But peace never came. Not really. I snapped the folder shut and opened my laptop. If I was going to extract myself from their narrative, I had to do it cleanly. First up, the gas card, the one I'd co-signed so Dad could keep driving to his weekend carpentry gigs. I pulled up the account. Balance 173 bars and 42 toes. I paid it, then I canceled the card. Next, utilities. I had automatic payments set for their electricity, water, internet, all in my name. I logged into the accounts, disabled autopay, and updated the billing address to theirs. Let them see the bills arrive. Let them decide what mattered more, heat or streaming services. Then came the big one, the shared savings account. Years ago, I opened it under the premise of just-in-case money, a little buffer for emergencies. Every month a portion of my salary went there unnoticed. I never looked, never touched it. But they did often. It had dwindled to $698. I transferred the funds to my personal account and closed it. My phone buzzed with confirmation emails. I muted it. One by one, the digital umbilical cord snapped. No more silent support. No more invisible scaffolding. As I deleted the final login credentials, I felt a weight shift. Not lifted exactly, just redistributed back to where it belonged. I wasn't punishing them. I was releasing myself from the expectation, from the invisibility, from the fiction they'd built with Claire as the heroine and me as the cautionary footnote. They could have the spotlight. They could keep telling that story, but they'd be paying for the lights. Every Canlet account felt like breathing with lungs. I forgot I had one click and the burden lightened. Another click and the weight shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was surgical, focused. With each digital disconnection, I was erasing a version of myself. One built to serve, to fix, to be forgotten. Then came the credit card. I had applied for it 5 years ago, back when Mom called in a panic about an urgent dental procedure. And Dad mumbled about pride and independence. It was supposed to be for emergencies, medical needs, nothing extravagant. I checked the balance out of habit before closing it. 2743. That wasn't right. I opened the recent transactions, expecting utilities or maybe a car repair. What I saw instead turned my stomach. 2 handbags, designer imported, 840 and 695s, respectively. A weekend spa retreat booked in CLA's name, and a dinner bill from a 5-star restaurant with a captioned photo I now recognize from Facebook. Sometimes a woman has to treat herself. My mother was tagged in the post, her smile, glossy lips, wine glass raised. The caption had read like empowerment. I hadn't realized I paid for it. I stared at the screen, blinking slowly, feeling something snap. Not loud, but final. My mom had spent more on a single dinner than I did on a week's worth of groceries. And she'd paid for it with a card bearing my name. The same woman who less than 48 hours ago declared I'd never lifted a finger. I froze the card, reported the charges as unauthorized, and closed the account. No anger, just clarity. Then my phone lit up again. This time it was a message from Dad. "Rachel, I saw what you did. Mom's upset. I know things were said that hurt you, but this isn't the way. You used to be the one we could count on. You were always steady. You were our pride. But now you're just making Mom feel ashamed. I read it 3 times. Our pride used to be now just making her ashamed. I didn't reply. What could I say? That I spent over a decade holding them up while being told I was too distant. That I swallowed every slight because I thought loyalty would win in the end. That I kept giving because I hoped one day they'd see me. But they had seen me. Clearly, they just didn't like what they saw. They preferred Claire's messiness over my stability. Her chaos felt closer to love. My silence, my structure. It never glittered. It never made the fridge door. I was the invisible spine of the house holding everything upright. And they never once asked how I managed to bear it all. Instead, now I was the disappointment because I stopped. I set my phone down and stood quietly in the middle of my living room. The sun had shifted. It cast long, warm lines across the floorboards. Outside, someone's child was laughing. A bird landed on my balcony railing, looked around, then took off again. Life didn't stop because I disconnected. It moved on. So would I. In that moment, I made a choice. Not out of spite, not out of pain, but out of necessity. No more saving. No more waiting. No more hoping they'd notice. From now on, I wouldn't give them the opportunity to erase me again. I let the silence settle before adding, "You don't need a place to crash. You need to stand up for once." She stared at me, eyes glassy, but she didn't argue. Instead, she bent down, zipped her bag shut, and slung it over her shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think you had it easy, and now I think you disappeared. Long before you left, and none of us noticed." I didn't reply. She took a shaky breath, turned, and walked back to her car. I stood there until her tail lights faded into the dusk. No victory. No closure, just truth. And the quiet relief of no longer being the one who had to hold everyone together. It started with a photo, a smiling snapshot of my parents' arms around each other in front of the old house, captioned in warm, performative melancholy. "Family means everything. Even when some people forget that." Posted by my mother, of course I wasn't tagged, but I didn't have to be. The timing was obvious. The angle was deliberate. That phrase, "even when some people forget," hung there like a poisoned ribbon. Within hours, the likes rolled in. An old cousin I hadn't spoken to in years commented, "So sorry you're going through this, Aunt Evelyn. Some people just get selfish." Another wrote, "It's always the reliable ones that stay, even when they're unappreciated. You two are amazing." I stared at the screen, not surprised, not hurt, just numb. Then came the second post, this time from Claire, a blurry photo of a family dinner, clearly from years ago. Me, barely visible at the edge of the table, turned half away from the camera. Her caption, "We all grieve differently. Some shut down, some walk away, some of us try to hold the pieces." It wasn't subtle. None of it was. They were laying the groundwork, positioning themselves as the abandoned, the ones left behind by the cold, distant daughter who cared more about money than people. Still, I didn't respond at first, but then Mom liked a comment, one that read, "She was